Media is a really powerful influence because it can really shape the way in which we see ourselves and how others see us. So if we don't see ourselves represented on screen, it can indicate a sense of lack of value or worthiness. And then we do see ourselves represented on screen, it can really shape the way that we see ourselves and how others may react and behave and relate to us. So I think the power of media is really strong in terms of influencing how we see ourselves in the world around us and then how others see us, which can then shape the way in which we behave with one another and how we relate to one another. At first, there was a complete lack of representation, so invisibility. And then when we started to have some more representation of South Asians on the screen, oftentimes it wasn't even by South Asians. And when when there was representation of South Asians, it was very much stereotyped or caricatures, often trading on perpetual foreigner or model minority stereotypes, which can be harmful. Things started to evolve where we had more accurate and nuanced representation, but generally that was sideblind characters or sidekicks, so there wasn't kind of a whole sense of humanity. Fortunately, things are changing, and so now we're seeing kind of more complex, multi-layered, multi-dimensional representation and even some leading roles. I think this is a really important topic that really, of course, does not have very much investment. So one of the things that we're trying to do is investigate what are the ways in which media representation of Asian Americans can influence their behavior, their attitudes about themselves, their sense of belongingness, and also how are they kind of experiencing the portrayals and the depictions of kind of their communities, and then how are others responding to those portrayals and depictions? Does it influence the ways in which the people who are not part of your community see your community or see others who are like you or even in other communities? Because what we do know is that when there's stereotypical or unidimensional representation of groups, oftentimes it leads to dehumanization, and when that people are not seen as full figures, full people, it can beget violence, community violence, discrimination, racial prejudice. And so one of the concerns that we have is if we continue to perpetuate these stereotypes, to what degree does that kind of contribute to exacerbating discrimination and potentially bullying, violence, and other kind of negative intergroup relationships? So other ways to get involved or learn more is that we'll be speaking about Asian American representation, 2 separate sessions. One focused on South Asian American representation and the impact on mental health at a session here at the APA. And we'll also be speaking about anti-Asian sentiment in the age of COVID-19, avenues for advocacy, at a separate session with Russell Jong, who is one of the founders of Stop Appy Hate, along with another APA caucus member, Will Wong. And then stay tuned for the results of the research findings related to the impact of Asian American representation and mental health.